In this video, we'll talk about variables and expressions, the difference of two different kinds of variables, and how to build expressions from word phrases. So let's talk about variables. So in math, there are two types of variables. The first type being a unknown. And usually this one stands for a value. So like for instance, if 2x equals 6, well, we could probably deduce that, oh, x must be 3. It stands for a value or a few set values in which we can solve or deduce what the variable must be. The other kind is a placeholder. And there's a subtle difference here. If we're talking about a placeholder, this is usually where you see things in formulas. So like for instance, E equals mc squared. All these variables mean something. It just shows the relationship between them. Another example would be F equals mass times acceleration. Now it doesn't matter what letters I necessarily use, this equation would still hold true. So it's a subtle difference. Placeholder is used to kind of express relationships where two values or more values are related, and an unknown is where we typically will solve for something. Now let's talk about expressions. So expressions are, well, they're not an equation, for one. There's no equal sign. We can use any operator, so that would be like addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, squaring, square rooting, any of those kind of operations, anything you can think of that you could do to a number, we can involve those in an expression. We can also use numbers, and we can also use variables. So for instance, I could have 5x squared plus 7x minus 2. That would be an expression. There's no equal sign. They could also be a lot simpler. I could have an expression just be 12. It could just be a number. It could just be a variable. I could just have x. All these would be examples of expressions. Now let's walk through an example. What we're trying to do here usually is trying to build expressions from situations, or in this case, word phrases. So if I'm looking at this, I want to build an expression for 5 more than a number. Well, 5 is just 5, so that's fine. More than, I hear that and I think to myself, that sounds like addition to me. 5 more than. And then a number. This is kind of a little bit of a different thing. This tells me there's something that I don't know. Okay? Usually we think of a variable. You can use whatever letter you like, whatever symbol you like. Usually textbooks will use x. So if I was to write an expression for this, I would say 5 plus x. Or, as the case may be, since it's the same thing, you could also write x plus 5. Either one of these would be fine. They're the same thing. Now let's take a look at a slightly more complicated example. We're looking at 12 less than the product of 4 and a number squared. There's a lot going on here. So 12 is just 12. I'm going to leave that be. The 4 is just a 4. I'm going to leave that be for a minute. Okay? Okay, less than. This is a weird phrase. So if I thought about 4 less than 100, I would take the 4 away from the 100, not the other way around. So this minus 12 is going to happen at the end. So I'm going to put that right here. And then we're going to have something here. So, product. This tells me I multiply what's about to follow. And I'm going to multiply the 4 and this number squared. So again, a number, I don't know what that is, call it x, and then squared. That just means I take it and I square it. So my expression tells me that I'm going to take 4 times x squared minus 12. That one's a really complicated example, but it's one to show you how if you take it one step at a time, just go really slow and really ask yourself what each piece means.